Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
And welcome back. This is Talking Books and Writing and Stuff's podcast. You can find us anywhere you get podcasts. And today we're talking with Brooke Lockyer. And the book I have in front of me is Burr. But first of all, Brooke, thank you for carving out some time to chat with us today about Burr and other things.
Thanks so much for inviting me, Dennis.
And let's go back, way back to your early days. Where did you grow up, and were you writing and reading at an early age?
Yes, I grew up just north of London, Ontario, kind of around where my book mostly takes place, between two towns, Arvin and Ilderton, off the gravel road. We had chickens and bees, and it was so beautiful and lush there, with all the Carolinian landscape. I have two older sisters, 10 years and 15 years older. And when they went away to school, I was kind of had a lot of time to myself and to explore. We always had so many books on the shelves, and my parents just let me choose whatever I wanted to read. And I just loved diving into all these different worlds. So I can't really ever remember a time not having my nose in a book. My parents even said that when we go to restaurants, I would be under the table reading. So it was always a huge part of my life, and a lot of my favorite, I think my influences were authors that I read when I was younger, like Roald Dahl was a big one for me.
So what led you then to writing? Did one come at the same time, or was it later on when you went to school? How did that work out?
Right. We always had kind of notebooks around, and I just always remember writing stories, and my mom kept them all, and she recently, gave me back this big file of them, and it was kind of funny to see it was written quite like phonetically spelled, but it was kind of a lot of the same themes that are in Burr. And I even had used the name Jane way back then, and there were lots of witches. And so I just thought, wow, I haven't like changed that much, even though who knows how old I was there, maybe like 7 or something. I always, I loved being in my imagination and kind of taking those influences from the stories and the fairy tales that I fell in love with, and kind of having a conversation with them. And that was always something important to me. And even my early close friendships, we would always, trade books and do a lot of imaginary games. So that was always a big part of my life.
And we're talking with Brooke Lockyer, and the book is Burr. And I've got to say that when I first saw the book, I said, oh, it's about Raymond Burr and Perry Mason. But
No,
not at all. So the title itself, how did that come about?
Sure. So one of the towns near where I grew up is called Burr, but it's spelled Birr. But in my head, I'd always imagined it as Burr, like the prickly plant. And so I kind of decided to make this book my Burr. It's sort of a bit of a wink to any readers from Southwestern Ontario that, I'm taking some license here. But I also love the idea of my book, is a lot about grief, and about this idea of grief being something you kind of carry around with you, like this kind of spiky plant that's stuck to you.
It's stuck and you can't get the dang things off, especially when they stick to your socks. I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. And just this sort of feeling of being from a small place, and at times feeling like you don't know if you can get out or if you want to get out. So yeah, for me, it was all of those things. And also I do think Burrs, though, can be beautiful as well, like when you see them out in a field.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the book is Burr, and it's described as Southern Ontario Gothic. Do you go along with that description?
Yeah, I mean, I love that genre, and so I'm quite delighted if to be put in that category. Alice Munro is someone who is often talked about that way, and I during the pandemic I joined a Munro book club on Zoom, and it was really amazing to revisit those stories. And each week we would just focus on one of her short stories, and it's just so incredible what she can do, and how Gothic some of the stories seem to me. So yeah, and I love she has a lot of stories. She has stories set in London as well. So it was cool for me to revisit some of those places through her eyes. And there's, I feel like now I'm kind of really tuned in on it, and I'm just seeing so many books come out now, from the region that are kind of playing with Gothic tropes and doing new things with that. So I think it's quite fun, and yeah, I love discovering other writers from the area.
Right. So how would you describe a Gothic novel? What does that term sort of mean to you?
Yeah. Well, I think Rebecca and by Daphne du Maurier, and What We've Always Lived in the Castle, Shirley Jackson, those are books I really loved. Wuthering Heights. So it's a lot of the books I love. And there are certain tropes, I think, with my book, maybe the way I'm treating the language is a bit different, or, I'm trying to make it contemporary in some ways. But I did want to have certain things that were true to the genre, like kind of haunted, spooky house, and, there's a fire in one scene, and sort of playing with tropes of madness. Those are kind of some of the stereotypes of Gothic literature, forbidden love, all of those things. But I wanted to kind of blend it with certain biographical details from my own life, and also just 90s things as well, just to kind of make it my own.
And Burr is the book, and someone told me that it was your thesis for your master's degree. Is that right? More or less?
Yeah, the first half was, yes. And then I didn't really know where I was going with it. And I sort of stepped away from it, but it kept kind of haunting me, and so yeah, I've carried these characters around with me for a long time. I think one of the things that made me really jump back in and really push through was becoming a mother, and that kind of whole identity shift that happens, and I just suddenly felt this huge drive to finish it. Everyone had kept telling me you're never going to write again. So I felt like, I was working on it, frantically pregnant. And then even, when there's nothing like having a baby napping on your stomach, and you don't know when they're going to wake up. That's going to put the pressure on you to like push through that scene and face those parts that scare you, because you're just so aware of how fleeting time is, and you're kind of in this sleepless state already in this elevated, heightened emotion. So it's kind of it was really hard, but also it kind of made me push through all those kind of fears and uncertainties to make an ending. And I had to rewrite it, a million times after, but it did push me through.
Yeah, it's kind of odd, isn't it? One day you're not a mother, the next day, all of a sudden you are. There's this thing in front of you. Go, what the heck am I going to do with this little thing who stares up with those big eyes and goes, Mama.
I know. And you do so much, they're tracking you the whole time you're pregnant, and there are all these rules, what to eat, what to do, and then you have the baby, and they're just like, bye, and all the focus was on the birth, and then I'm like, I don't even know how to bathe this child, or totally.
So yeah, basically, I mean, it's hard to condense, but the 13-year-old Jane reunites. She wants to reunite with her dead father. She wants to dig into her grave, but then all these other characters pop up. There's Ernest and there's Meredith. Meredith is the mother. And is there anything that inspired this book, or is it all right from your imagination?
I started with the idea of Jane and Annie kind of making up rumors about Ernest. I kind of saw him as sort of, like a kind of gothic archetype, or
Yep.
sort of. And so I started with that, and it was kind of a short story. I was writing some scenes for a short story initially. And then my father died really suddenly, and I actually, killed off Jane's father, and I kind of worked through some of those feelings about grief through these fictional characters. I was a lot older than Jane was, but inside I still have that 13-year-old self in me as well, and so it was sort of, for me, writing has always been a way to try to make sense of the world and my feelings and kind of connect things in my head. So it was painful, but also felt necessary for me to kind of delve through that, and the kind of transformation and the reverberations that happen afterwards through the whole family. It doesn't end with the one person's death. It affects everyone, and the whole dynamic shifting. So to kind of explore some of those themes and ideas and questions I had through fiction was really helpful and interesting to me.
And the people in the book, the characters, all have grief and death, and they all deal with it obviously completely differently, like the mother, the daughter, and Ernest with his spooky mansion locked away. I guess that kind of holds true for everybody, doesn't it? We all deal with things like that in completely different manners.
Yes, definitely. And and I feel there's often, I wanted to have this sort of overlay of kind of fantasy in the novel as well, this sort of sense of unreality, and that kind of the imagination is a place of escape for the characters from their pain.
And what have you found of reaction? What are people saying when they read the book?
Yeah, I think that some people say that they felt, for a book that was so focused on death, that it was very lively. It had a lot of life in it, which made me happy, because although there are definite moments of pain, I wanted it also to be a celebration of life. So that was really nice to hear. It's interesting. I feel like people often connect to different characters or different scenes, and I like hearing about that, because it is such a strange feeling to have something that's been in your head for so long, then kind of go out in the world and it becomes its own thing. So it's been really fun to connect to readers, and I feel really lucky that Nightwood published it, and that I've been able to, post-pandemic, do readings in bookstores and get to meet independent bookstore owners and connect to people that way. It was so wonderful to be out in the world after those lockdowns and everything.
Right. Yeah, I'm with Brooke Lockyer is with us now. She's from, as she said earlier, a small Southern Ontario type town. But according to this, you've lived in rural Japan, New York City, Bristol, the Mojave Desert. Now you're in Toronto area. How did all those different places come about, just to completely change the topic?
Yeah, I think I've always had a big curiosity about the world, maybe due to being from a small place. I remember, going to like the closest Blockbuster as a kid and just heading for the foreign film section there, which would be like one shelf,
Right.
and just taking whatever was there and kind of learning about the world and different cultures that way, and also through books. So yeah, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to study in New York at Barnard College, which was wonderful. And I did a year abroad in Bristol there. So that's how I got that one. And then I taught English in Japan through the JET program, which was an incredible experience as well, in a very small town. So yeah, that was amazing. And then my husband, my partner at the time, works with the desert tortoise in California, Nevada. So we kind of bought an old trailer there and like spent a lot of months down there in the Mojave Preserve, which was such a cool environment to be camping there and meeting all the different people. It's such a different culture. So that was also a real adventure.
So there we go. It's you, like they say, you've been everywhere. So Brooke, we're talking about your book Burr, but basically, why do you write? What's in it for you?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, I just feel like it's my way of kind of processing the world, and I love. I played piano for many years as a kid. I love the sound of sentences and the rhythms of them. I love, I'm inspired by movies a lot too. So having kind of vivid imagery is really important to me. And I like the idea of being in dialogue with so many of the books that brought me pleasure and escape growing up.
And how do you write? Do you have a pen and pencil or paper or typewriter or on your laptop? How do you physically do the task?
That's a good question. I do always try to have a notebook around because, of course, you always get your best ideas when you can't find one, and then you never remember. So I always try to have something like that with me. I feel like I get a lot of ideas when I'm in motion, if I'm walking somewhere, that kind of thing. I know a lot of people write longhand first, and I would like to try that as well, but I actually like typing on the computer. I think it was because I played piano for so many years, but to me it almost feels like I'm used to kind of communicating emotion through my fingers. So it doesn't feel so like robotic to me. To me, it feels natural to kind of be typing and using my fingers that way and feeling the emotions go through them into the screen. I think I also I've been experimenting with the Scrivener program. I like being able to save different versions of the scenes I'm working on. I feel like I can be bold. I can cut whole sections out, but also have another version that just, eases my anxiety a bit about making dramatic changes. So, I do all of it, but I like editing with a pencil on paper. And I feel like, or even playing with format, when you print it, you notice new things. So there definitely is a time for me with the pen and paper as well.
And do you have a routine, or is with your life the way it is in 2024, catch as catch can?
I love to write in the morning. That's my favorite time. And I've had periods where I've had insomnia, which is horrible. But the flip side is I realized instead of just panicking over it, I would just go and I would write. And then even if I'd be totally tired during the day, I feel like I use that time. So if insomnia strikes, I'm writing then. Otherwise, I try to wake up in the morning when I'm feeling the most fresh. But yeah, really, I think no matter what, even if I have a lot of time or a little, it's nice to try to be connected to the current project in some way, like at least keep it so that world is present to you, so that whenever you're doing non-writing stuff, you're noticing things in nature and overhearing conversation and all those pieces. You're kind of looking at them through the lens of your current work. So for me, that's been a big takeaway, to just always try and stay present in the work.
Brooke Lockyer is with us. Yep, the book is Burr. What do you hope readers take away from it?
I mean, I'm not the kind of person that likes to, I think the book is a bit elliptical and open-ended, and I try not to give easy answers to it because I think my personality is not very prescriptive. So that's a hard question for me. But I guess I hope that people, maybe think about death and grieving in new ways. And that's it.
And we all have one thing in common. We're going to die, and we also know that there is grief involved throughout our lives. So maybe Burr will help as a blueprint for some folks to deal with those realities.
That would be wonderful.
So a couple more questions for Brooke Lockyer. Nightwood Editions, how did your connection with them come about?
So I have a good friend, Katrina Wright, who published a wonderful collection of short stories with Nightwood called Difficult People. And I really admire her work, and that book was wonderful. I knew about them. I'd been introduced to them through that book. It took me a while to find the right home for Burr. I was originally working with an agent. And then when his 2 years were up with it, I found out I could submit myself. And I actually, it was kind of good to do that process. And some of what I had put in my pitch for the small presses ended up on the back of the book. So although it's a lot of work, it was kind of good for me to distill in my mind what the book was about, and just to connect, and kind of fun. It felt a bit like putting a message in a bottle. You don't know if you're ever going to hear back from places. But actually, I think it didn't take as many months as I had feared, and even the rejections I got, often, one was written in beautiful fountain pen and so nice. And and then I had a couple that were interested, and Nightwood was a great fit for this book. And they've been wonderful through the editing process and helping, me as an introvert learn how to, promote the book. I've had a lot of support there, and they have such a beautiful list of books, and I've gotten to know more of their backlist, and I'm so excited to have that flame on the spine of my book.
And what's next for you? Any other projects that you can reveal at this time?
Sure. I'm working on another fiction project right now. I'm not sure if it's going to be a novella or a novel yet, and it's tentatively titled Call-Bearer. And it's also has some Gothic elements, and it's I don't know if you are familiar with the term call-bearer, but they're pretty rare. It's when babies are born with their amniotic sac still intact, and my youngest daughter was one, and my midwife was really excited. She told me in England in Victorian times that calls were dried and sold to sailors to prevent them from drowning, and that it was a really good omen. So I was excited. I went on my computer, and then I found out in Eastern Europe it's a bad thing, and they think they're going to become vampires. So I got really excited, and I've been exploring some of the mythologies about that. So I'm having fun with that right now, and just kind of finalizing a first draft. But I actually like the first draft part, because everything's still open and possible, and you're kind of your brain's kind of pinging with ideas. So
and before we wrap it all up today here with Brooke Lockyer, you have a website. Maybe you can spell it out for us.
Sure. Thank you so much. My website is my name, brookelockyer.com, and I'm also on Instagram. My public account is Brooke Lockyer Writer. And
it's Brooke with an E, so it's BROOKELOCKYER.com. There we go. Yep.
That's great.
That's great. Brooke, thank you very much for spending time with us with this chat about Burr, and good luck in your future projects.
Oh, it was a pleasure to connect with you today. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.